No worries. So, as I was talking about, chemistry is a very, very difficult subject area, and a lot of people don't want to do it because of how engaging and how difficult it can be. But actually, most graduate schools where students pursue cell biology or genetics actually prefer chemistry students because of the rigor that chemistry puts them through. So anybody that gets through chemistry with a second class, upper second class, lower first class, they are really, really good students because chemistry is a very rigorous subject and you need it to study most of the biological sciences. If you are in a biological or biomedical sciences field and your chemistry is not very strong, you you can do, but you don't do as well as people that have very, very strong chemistry background. All right. So following my master's in chemistry, I knew that I wanted to pursue a PhD program. So um, I did apply to a lot of PhD programs to pursue a PhD in biochemistry. But one of the things that I also did was to write the GRE multiple times, and I'll talk about the GRE in the next couple of slides. But I can see a lot of people are very, very scared about this whole GRE thing, and I get a little bit disappointed because I feel like if you want to pursue graduate school, you need to do everything that puts you in a very good position to pursue graduate school. So, if you have heard any myth about GRE, I want you guys to debunk those myths. I think that it's time that, if you're in level 400, you are just about to finish, you pick up your GRE book, get some money, register for the GRE, and write so that you can apply to schools. It might not be needed in applying to schools in Europe and in Ghana, but if you're interested in the United States or Canada, you would definitely need a GRE. Some schools are waiving it, but from my perspective and dealing with graduate students, I think that those who write the GRE are those who actually succeed in getting into these graduate programs. Okay, so from Missouri State, I did my PhD at the beautiful Washington University in St. Louis. I was a biochemistry PhD student for 6 years, and following that, I moved to the University of Virginia to pursue a clinical biochemistry postdoctoral fellowship. So I actually just finished this fellowship last year, June, and because of the COVID, I couldn't come to Ghana in September, but I was able to relocate in January to start my position as a lecturer in biochemistry and also do research with WAPIC, which is the West African Center for Cell Biology into Infectious Pathogens. Because of my fellowship and the way my fellowship is structured, I do have a license to practice as a clinical biochemist in the United States and in other countries. So I actually provide a lot of technical consulting to a lot of these labs that are going through accreditation that want to make their labs the best. So if you know of any lab person that really want to make their lab very robust and up to standards of developed countries, you can definitely talk to them so that they can come and talk to me. Currently, I do a lot of research. Most of the research that we are trying to do is centered on the African population. We are trying to develop reference intervals that are pertinent for our continent. Because when you go to the hospital and they determine your glucose level or your liver function test, there's what we call a reference interval that is usually the range that healthy individuals should fall within. So, for example, glucose, you should normally fall between, it depends on the lab, but between 3.6 and 6.4 millimoles per liter. That's the reference interval for glucose. Anybody outside those limits is considered diseased. So, if you have a glucose level less than 3.6, you can be hypoglycemic. And if you have it more than 6.4, you can be hyperglycemic or diabetes. Those are what medical doctors use for diagnosis. The challenge that we face is that most of these reference intervals have been developed for the white people. They developed for white people and they brought it to Africa for us to adopt it, which is not great for medical practice in Africa. So what our lab is trying to do is to have our own reference intervals that clinicians and medical doctors can tap into so that they can use it to provide the best care for Africans, both the adult and pediatric populations. We also work on infectious pathogens. One of the key pathogens, some of the pathogens are involved in urinary tract infections, and we are trying to understand molecular mechanisms of how these genes and proteins invade the human system, and how we can develop therapeutic ways of interrupting some of these pathways that they use for invasion. Alrighty, okay. So let me start from an undergrad perspective. Since a lot of us are doing our undergrad now, I just wanted to ask about what you did to apply for your undergrad. You know, how was the process? I can have volunteers, or I can start mentioning names. I like mentioning names. I like the nice names. McAfee wants to talk. Oh, McAfee, you don't want to talk. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, so if you want to share with us how your undergraduate application went or was, kindly raise your hand and then you shall be called to share with us.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Makafu.
Well,
Yeah.
Actually, my process was actually done for me by my secondary school teacher whilst I was in school.
Okay. So McAfee just said that his Legon application was performed by his secondary school teacher, so he didn't really have a lot of input. But definitely, you know, he his passing result was obtained and used to follow. Okay. Who else was involved in filling their own application for undergrad? Can you tell us the process?
Sandra Saki.
So I filled my undergrad application together with my cousin. And then before filling it, actually, I was quite scared because I wanted to go to medical school and everything. But then, and I didn't know what to choose for my second choices because I really didn't know anything about the university. It was just about, okay, you are coming to the university, this science, you have to do medicine. Like, I didn't really know about, let's say, there were courses like, I knew about biochemistry. I was actually scared of biochemistry because everybody said it was difficult. Even my chemistry teacher in essay just told me it was difficult. So I decided that it was a no-go area for me. If I didn't get medical school, then I'll just have to go elsewhere, like maybe computer science or IT or something, because biochemistry was definitely no for me because I was scared. I mean, what if I don't do well? Yeah, but then I filled it. When the results came later, I added biochemistry to my application. And then, fortunately, should I say fortunately or unfortunately, I ended up in biochemistry. Yeah, and both I applied to University of Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And in both schools, I think in Kwame NAST KNUST, I got I think computer science. But then I felt like, well, I just want to do the biochemistry because later maybe you can go to medical school. So yeah, that's how come I ended up in biochemistry. But yeah, it was pretty scary.
All right, thank you very much, Sandra. And which level are you?
Level 400.
Level 400. So just about to complete. So maybe I can ask you a straight question. What are your plans after graduating?
At the moment, I don't really have, I have plans, but I don't really know which plans to go with. So I'm considering medical school and doing something like a master's in biochemistry, but where exactly in biochemistry, I don't know.
Okay, I like people that don't know. It's much easier for those people that know. It's very, very difficult to to really train them because you know they've preset their mind and you know they want to work with COVID, and if they don't get a lab that works on COVID, then you know it becomes a disaster. But I believe in open-mindedness, and that is the great thing about graduate school. You're going to explore so many areas and find where you find fit. That is the key thing. In life, what I've grown to see is that fitness is key rather than having a preconceived notion. Because I went into graduate school, PhD, thinking that I was going to work on DNA protein interactions. I rotated in 3 labs. None of them was a good fit for me. So I ended up working in a cancer lab. I worked on breast cancer, biophysical studies and characterization of some of these proteins that are involved in breast cancer. Nothing to do with DNA. So, if I was supposed to be a very headstrong guy and be very, very unwilling to change my research teams, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So I want you guys to be very, very open-minded about this whole graduate school thing, and wherever you find fit. I've had great mentors, and usually they keep telling me, Koby, don't go for the science, go for the culture of the lab, go for where you find it fit. Every lab does great science, but you want to wake up and get into a lab where the culture is very good, because you're going to be frustrated during graduate school. You're going to cry. So you want to get into a lab that you wake up the next morning and say, I'm going to go into this lab. It's going to be a lot of fun. Even though my experiments are not working out, I have a community of support that is willing to help me. Okay, so usually go for the culture of the lab and the dynamics, but not the science. The science is great, and the science is going to be great anyway. So just make sure you are choosing wisely. Any questions before we move on? Frank, can they ask questions during the session, or it is after my presentation? I just wanted to be clear on that.
It is after your presentation. So if they have questions, they can put it in the chat box.
I got it. Okay, all right. Let me roll. Okay, so we just talked about undergraduate application, and usually in Ghana undergraduate application, we usually need WASI results, and we fill an application, send it to 2 or 3 schools, and usually you're going to get an admission if your WASI results are great. So mostly it depends on your WASI results. That is it. But we come to graduate school and it's a different ball game. We have not just your transcript, but there's what we call an online application. Your transcript, they can be official, unofficial. Some schools require you to do transcript evaluation. There are recommendation letters, statement of purpose, letter of intent, writing samples, standardized tests, GRE, GMAT, TOEFL. Then you have to think about funding, scholarships, allowances, stipends, research statements, your publications that you've had. You need to be following up with emails. Then, once you start putting your application, then there are going to be a lot of rejections. The rejections usually come first. So there are going to be rejections first, then the acceptance start trickling in. You're going to have interviews. Some are going to be phone, on Zoom, on Google Meets. Then once you get a school, you have to also go for the visa. And that is actually something that is very, very tough. So, if you've applied to a master in Ghana, then once you've gotten the admission, you have to make the payment or seek funding. But if you are traveling outside of the country, then you have to go get a visa. You have to think about where you're going to stay, your flights, you're going to be away from home. And believe you me, this whole process can be very daunting. It can be overwhelming, and I want you guys to start thinking about this whole process very, very early. But if you're in level 300, level 200, I want you to focus on getting your GPA right. That is the main thing that you can do. But if you're in level 400, about to finish, if you're doing your master's, this is a process that you want to start thinking about very, very early, because it can take at least, 6 months to get all of these things together. And you don't want to be putting in very late applications. If the application deadline is 1st December, if you submit it 2nd December, you're not going to get in. So you need to start thinking about all these processes very, very early so that you can put in a very good application. And don't apply on the deadline. Apply at least 2 weeks before the deadline so that they know that you're a very, very good student who wants to get into that institution. So what, over the past decade, probably from 2008, what I've been doing is to actually provide a roadmap of perspective so that we can help graduate school application process. So as was it McAfee? So what we do is we don't do the application for you. So we can students, but what we can do is to be able to at least hold your hand so that you can tread the path. Okay, we can do it together. So you bring your questions and we can work through those questions much easier rather than doing everything for you. We think that we don't help you that way. So if you have somebody that's a mentor that has that third eye to look through your stuff for you, it's much easier rather than having somebody do the whole application work. You guys are adults already. Most of you are 18 and above, and I really want you guys to take that bold step rather than getting people do all these applications, right? So what we've been doing for the past decade is to hold hands so that we can get these applications together and equip you with the necessary tools and logistics that would help you navigate this whole process. Okay, all right. So graduate school is tough. I really want to let you guys know, if there are master students here, they can confess and confirm how tough graduate school is. It's not something that's very trivial, and I don't want you to have this good feeling that it's going to be okay. It's very tough. So you need to have certain things in place so that when you get into graduate school, things are much more easier. So are you prepared academically for graduate school? Do you have the research skills that would help you become an independent thinker or researcher? Do you have very good finances? Because there are some schools that when I started graduate school at Missouri State, I had to pay. I had to pay for my funding. So, you need to think about the financial considerations. You need to have a certain level of problem solving skills so that you can also learn new techniques. You need to be able to criticize people's work and also be accepting that when people criticize your work, you don't get angry. You need to have some very good management skills in terms of time, stress, relationship, family, interpersonal, communication skills. I keep saying communication skills. I said it yesterday because as a scientist, you need to be able to communicate your science both in writing and also orally. Without that, your science wouldn't make sense. You can do all the lab work, but if you can't communicate your work orally by talking to people about your science using the right scientific terms and jargons, then your science wouldn't make sense. So if you're looking at all these and you're like, I'm lacking in these areas, you need to think about what you can do to improve some of these skills that would allow you to answer the question, am I ready for graduate school? This is a question that you need to think about now, especially if you are in level 400 or doing your master's degree now, so that at least you know which of these skills that you need to improve upon. All right, so let's talk about some key elements before application. So you need to think about why you want to go into graduate school, where you see yourself in the future, and what skills that you need in graduate school to get to this point. It's very important because if you are like my wife that wants to sell juice, you don't need graduate school to go and sell juice, right? Your undergrad should position you very well so that you can go and sell juice or go and sell eggs or offer a certain level of service that do not need graduate school. But if you want to enter into a very specific job market, then there are certain skills that you need into graduate school that will allow you to get to that point. Okay, so let's talk about the graduate school application. So there are what we call the general requirements that are needed and also very specific requirements that are needed. So usually when I get a student asking me to help them with graduate school, apart from telling them to go and write GRE, because that's the first that I'm going to tell you, go and write the GRE because it helps you apply to a lot of schools. If you apply to schools that waive the GRE, you put yourself between the rock and a hard place. There's no wiggle room. You cannot breathe because you're only applying to a handful of schools. But applying to schools that require a GRE is going to put you in a very good position so that you can apply to a lot of schools. But apart from me telling them that these are kind of the steps that, that are involved in applying in the general application. So you need to identify the schools. So this is something that you need to spend your time to identify most of these schools. And if you can talk to Kwame now, Kwame was very, very good at identifying these schools. And what actually helped him was the fact that he identified schools that had free application. So if you don't spend your time very well in identifying these schools, you're going to identify schools that charge very, very high and you might not even get it. But you lose nothing when you apply to schools that do not charge you anything. So that way you can apply to, if you are going to apply to 10 schools that are going to charge, you can apply to 20. And the odds are if you apply to 20 schools, you're probably going to get about 5 schools. The odds are not great. You have about a 25 to 30% chance of getting into these graduate schools. So you need to apply to more schools so that you can get into at least, a few of them, then you can make a selection. Okay, so then there's the whole application process, which is usually online. There are still a few schools that are using paper application. You need to submit your official transcripts. You need to submit recommendation letters. You need to write a statement of purpose. You need to write a GRE, which I strongly recommend. There are certain programs that are required to do a writing sample. That is not required for most biomedical programs. You need a research statement, a CV or a resume. Then once you are shortlisted, there's usually the interview that you need to perform very, very well. There's also the graduate assistantship application that will help you with funding and scholarship. And also, you need to be doing some contacting. So, when you look at this process, it's something that's not trivial. And you need to develop a plan. I usually have an Excel sheet that, you can use to track your progress during the whole application process. Then following that, there's the visa application and interview accommodation arrangements, and when you get there, you need to adjust to graduate school. So let's start with these deadlines. I was very, very strict about these deadlines because there are no excuses. You are submitting through an online portal, so it's not like there's a human person there who is monitoring this. So once the deadline is passed, the deadline is passed. So usually, most schools have 3 different start dates, but the most that schools have is the 4 start date, which is usually August or September. There is the spring, which is January or February, and summer, which is May, June. At the University of Ghana, we are usually starting during the fall semester. So August, September is when the University of Ghana graduate school starts. The admissions can be rolling. That means that students can still submit the applications as and when, and determinations of admissions will be made when you submit your applications. However, there are other schools that are very, very specific that, okay, submit it 1st December, and when all the applications come in, that's when they go through it and they make a determination on who they are going to select. Most of these admissions, they are targeting US students, but there are also international admissions that usually have earlier deadlines. My recommendation is that you need to submit the application by the deadline, at least 2 weeks before the deadline. But there are always leg rooms that these schools usually give, because your transcript might delay, your recommendation letters might delay. So those ones, they can have some leg rooms or some wiggle or some leverage so that you can submit them later. But the main application, please and please again, you need to submit it at least 2 weeks before the deadline. These are some of the deadlines. I'm not going to go through all of them, but usually for the fall semester, which starts in August, the following year. So for example, if you are planning to get into graduate school next year, August, most of the deadlines are going to be December 1st through February 1st. But most of them, are December 1st or December 15th or January 1st. So you need to make sure that by that time, you'd have written your GRE, you'd have had your recommendation letters, your transcripts, your CV ready, your SOP or your personal statements ready, so that by that time, 2 weeks before the deadline, you can submit all of these. Okay. So what would you consider when choosing a graduate program. You know, it all depends on what what you're very, very passionate about. There are so many things that you can consider in picking a graduate school. So usually you want to look at their satisfactory levels. Graduate school, please, it's not as rosy as we see it. And you can just ask the master students, are the current graduate students happy and excited? So if you go to tech master's program, you can inquire from the students, are they excited? Are they happy about whatever they are? So, that would help you gauge whether this is a place that you want to go for your graduate school. Secondly, what is their time to graduation? There are programs that, just a master's degree can take 6-7 years. You don't want to go to such places because you also have a life that you need to live outside of graduate school. What are some of the conferences that graduate students attend? What are the career path of past graduate students? If you believe that you want to be a professor or a lecturer, and there's a particular graduate school that most of their students get into biotech, then that's not the school that you want to enroll at. So you need at all what is the program that are there a lot of answers in this school? What is the structure of their coursework, their qualifying exam structure? What are their teaching requirements? Funding. Do they have funding? For me, it's a no if the school doesn't have funding. Because, money shouldn't be something that you should be worried about during graduate school. So funding is one of the key things that when I'm trying to identify schools or pick a school, I look at. I also look at their publications, the location and the graduates and the climate. But also you want to go to a school that you're excited about the research of a lot of the faculty, not just one or two. I've seen students go to one graduate school that they thought that, oh, this professor works on tuberculosis, so I'm going to go to that school and work on tuberculosis. You get to the school and they might have moved to another institution. They might not have the money, or these guys might not be very good mentors. Most people in their labs are not very, very happy. So you shouldn't get into a school that only one or two people, their research excites you, but where at least, 5 people are doing research that overlaps or might excite you, so that you can easily move around and, pick any of those that are doing very, very good research or research that aligns with your career path. Okay, so how do you do this? So Google is a very, very good resource. There are so many things that you can do with Google. These are things that, I want students to do. Nobody should be doing these things for you. Nobody should be identifying these schools. But when you identify them, you can easily run them by people and, ask them their opinions on these schools, because most of us would have had some level of engagement with those schools and we can advise you, but nobody should be identifying these schools. So Google is, I think that Google is your best friend, but there are also other sources. Also, ask, there are schools that have a very, very good history of accepting students from Ghana and from Africa. You should definitely engage those schools because, they know us and they know what we are capable of doing. Okay, so what's my rule of thumb? How many schools should I apply to? At least 5. At least 5. So, and there's a structure that I provide. At least you should apply to one top tier school. One tier school that, okay, my dream is to go to MIT. So, what, let me just apply for the fun of it. Harvard, Stanford, Oxford. I think that, you should, it's just like somebody said, if you are poor, you should just at least wake up one day and, go to the Benz car shop and tell them you want to buy a Benz. Just drive in one and go home. Just feel good about these things, Charlie. Life is too short. So get that one top tier school, also 3 middle tier schools, and also 1 low tier school. And the reason why I include this low tier school is that as for this school, no matter, even if they are picking one person, you are going to be the person that they're going to pick. So you should have a certain level of, confidence that, as for this school, I'm going to get in. So that's a rule of thumb. 5 schools. I usually want to go for schools that waive TOEFL and IELTS. I think that Ghana is a very good English speaking country. They don't have to worry us about these TOEFL and IELTS or this English language requirements. Also, schools with free application fees. That is key. Free application. It saves you a lot. Most of these schools are the ones that are actually going to give you admission. So make sure that you are getting into these schools. Also, as I've said earlier, schools that provide a certain level of funding. Money shouldn't be something that you should be worried about now. So there are also the departments. So we have the graduate school admissions that it talks about international applicants, how to submit a general application, your transcript, standardized test, graduate assistantship. But there's also the program or department specific application that some schools require you to apply to. Usually now they are migrating all of them onto one portal. But what happens is that usually your application gets sent either to the graduate school before they send it to the program. That's what usually happens. So the graduate school has to approve your application before it gets sent onto the program for them to approve. So there are specific requirements that the program provides and also specific requirements that the graduate school provides. That's why usually when you have a lower GPA, the graduate school, although the program might say, we really want you, but if you don't satisfy those requirements by the graduate school, it's probably very, very tough. So one of the places that I think might be good for biochemistry students to apply to are what we call these umbrella programs. So these programs are not just biochemistry department, but it's a whole biomedical sciences program that they have a lot of different programs in their umbrella. So as you can see, this is the Washington University in St. Louis. They have biochemistry, biophysics and structural biology program, computation and systems biology, developmental and cell biology, evolution, human genetics, immunology, MCB, molecular genetics, microbiology, neuroscience. They have all these programs underneath one huge umbrella program. And if I were you, I would apply to these huge programs because, those have the probability to give you the admission rather than those that are very, very small programs. They only admit 5 students, and those ones, the competitions are very, very high. So apply to these huge programs, and I think that you have a better luck of getting into these programs. Okay, so I've talked about this, but the general application is usually online. That one, they are looking for your basic information, so that's where you create an account. You have your personal profile, your date of birth, and very, very basic information. Also your educational background, and that's where you submit your CV, and your lecturers can submit their letters of recommendation. You can submit your unofficial transcript, and you can submit your statement of purpose. It's very, very basic, but you need to prepare all these documentation so that you can it's much better to do through the online portal. Okay, so GPA and so usually for most schools, they require a GPA of 3.0. And in few schools that you can see, they need a GPA of 2.5 or 2.75. But GPA of 3.0 is what is usual. There are no tech students on this line, so I wouldn't talk about tech. If you can 300, please, if your GPA is low, your last 4 semesters are the most important. So you can achieve that dream, that aim, because usually they consider your last 4 semesters. So please, you are borderline major courses. So those African studies, those courses that are not
Sarpong, you can continue.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I'm having internet issues, but we are back. If you guys don't mind, I can turn off my video so that I can have some bundle. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we've talked about transcripts. I think that let's move on. Okay, so these letters of recommendation needed for application. Usually, these schools, they want to see how you perform with other lecturers from these lecturers and professors. So usually it's 2 or 3 that are needed, but please, this is something that undergraduates, you have to be very, very intentional about these things, because the lecturers have to know whether you're a very serious student. So you cannot just out of the blue come and ask me that, Dr. Sarpong, can you write a recommendation letter for me when I do not know you? So be very intentional about this, approach them so that they know you are working very hard, they know you are part of the biochemistry program, so that when they are writing these letters for you, it's much easier for them to write it for you and put a name to it rather than writing a generic letter of reference for you. Usually it's much better to use your school's email, ask very, very early. These lecturers, they're very, very busy, and you don't want to ask them last minute. Also, ask lecturers or professors who are familiar with your progress. So you cannot just go ask anybody that hasn't even taught your supervisor to work. You need to ask people that you are conversant with and that are willing to provide a certain level of information about you. What usually happens is that they might not have the time. Write the recommendation letter and bring it to me, and I can edit it and send it on your behalf. It's much easier that way. Don't come and give me any wahala, and I have to think about all these big English words that I should be writing for you. Write it yourself, bring it, I can edit it, and we can send it. So usually when you're sending these recommendation requests, you want to give the lecturers, the school, which program, potential advisors, your career plan, skill sets that you possess and skills that you want to acquire. And you might end up writing the draft. I believe in writing the draft. It's much easier, and I think that you can write more about yourself than somebody writing about you. It's much easier. Follow this, and I think that it's going to make your life much more easier. Okay, so what is the statement of purpose? Statement of purpose is, I see it as a very detailed story about yourself. And I think that is the most important that the selection committee needs. Apart from your GP and your GRE, they use that to screen. But your statement of purpose is something that I think is the most important part of your application. It talks about why you are choosing this school, why this program, why this research mentor, and how the program would help you achieve your aim. Is there that you can talk about your academic experiences, your research experience, your personal qualities, other skills, but also you want to tell them about how you can best fit into this program, your ability to contribute and benefit from your program, and how your interests align with the department and the core values of the institution. This has to be very, very consistent with your CV. But what I see is that it gives a fuller picture of yourself, something that you want them to know. You want them to know about your culture, your struggles, your persistence. I believe that a statement of purpose, is the one thing that can convince the admission. Even if you have a GP of less than 3.0, this is where you can explain to them that, I had a crisis, a midlife crisis, and that's why, I performed poorly in during my undergraduate studies, and now I've done this research, I've published this paper. I think that I'm a best fit for your program. So I think that you would have to make sure that you are capable of doing research. Mind you, this is not an essay, maximum of 1 page. Don't go and write 3 pages. They are not going to read it. They usually read only the first page. This is about you. It's personal. Don't go and look online and write somebody's personal statement or statement of purpose. It needs to be about you. Don't write a generic statement to all the different schools. You need to be very, very specific because, you know, they know when the statement of purpose is generic because you are repeating the same thing and you might even include one school in the other school and they might get you. So take your time. You are applying to a lot of schools. You know, this might be your life. So make sure you're not writing anything generic. Do the research. Make sure that you are researching about the school. Make sure you don't have any grammatical errors. You need to ask your colleagues to critique. But this is a place that you're going to sell yourself. And you are going to sell yourself to them so that they can buy you. If they cannot buy you, then it makes no sense. So sell yourself. Tell them the bigger picture. In some situations, they are going to ask you very specific questions. That, okay, in your statement of purpose, address these questions. Please follow the instructions. Do not write a generic statement for all the different schools. So, for example, you know, the University of Rhode Island, their statement of purpose says that in your statement of purpose, identify faculty you are interested in working with, and also clearly communicate your research interest, relevant experience, and future plans. That's all that they need in a statement of purpose. So this is very, very specific. You don't need to write anything apart from whatever they've given you. So make sure you are at the school's website, you are doing the research, you know what they require. At the University of Iowa, they said, please provide a document describing your professional and intellectual goals and the relation of these goals to the degree and program you are applying. This document should include your name and should be less than 1 page and no more than 2 pages. You get it? So these are very, very specific, and I want you guys to follow basic instructions, and you're going to do very, very well. Okay, so apart from the statement of purpose, there are schools that also require you to write a research statement. Usually it's what you did for your research and the conclusions that you got. You need to emphasize your research works, your struggles, your excitement, your resilience. You need to know your research and the institution and how your research actually overlaps with what they are researching. So in all this, one thing that I keep telling students is that they need to see passion in the statements that you are writing so that when they are reading it, they know that, Charlie, this guy really wants to get into graduate school. Okay, I'm not going to talk about academic writing samples because it's usually for humanities and the social sciences. Resume or CV. You know, this way I think that most students, you know, they don't do very well because, you know, we are going with, you know, whatever we are used to, but that's not globally accepted. I see students that, you know, these guys are going through thousands of applications, okay? At the University of Ghana, we go through a lot of applications. So we do not have time to, we can't spend that time going through all the pages of your CV. If the first page doesn't interest us, we are going to move on to the next applicant. So I see people putting their date of birth, whether they are single or married, the church that they go, the street, you know, all these are very, very irrelevant. Your statement of your CV should be very crisp, direct, and straight to the point. Do not include other things that are not relevant. And make sure you go to Google, you see CVs or resumes for students that are applying to schools, for undergraduate students like you. And that will give you, you know, a certain level of gauge that you can use to develop your own CV or resume. As I said, the first page is the most important. Okay, let me move to standardized tests. We have a lot of standardized tests for science students, but the most that is required is the GRE. TOEFL is an English language requirement that, for me, I personally don't believe that they should be using that to assess us. But GRE is the one that I'm going to encourage if you're interested in pursuing schools in the US or Canada. Is one that you need to write. If you're going to pursue it in Ghana or UK, you do not need a GRE. But a lot of students freak out because of the GRE. But while some schools require it, other schools do not require it. Maybe, you know, it might be 70% that required. I think maybe now it's 50-50. A lot of schools are waiving it, but, you know, if you're going in with a GPA of 3.4, remember there are students that have GPAs of 3.9 and 4.0 that are applying to the same schools. It's hard to compete, okay? So write a GR so that you can have a lot of schools that you can apply to, and I think that will be something that help you very well. I think that because of our time, I might not have the time to go through the tenets of the GRE, but when you're writing this GRE, they don't usually evaluate you on the raw scores. They evaluate you on the percentile. That means that how many people did you do better than, right? So if you're 70%, that means that for students that took the same exams with a level of difficulty, you perform better than 70% of them. So they're usually looking at the percentiles rather than the raw scores that you obtain. So this is the one test that is for graduate school and for business school, but they closely reflect the kind of thinking that you do in graduate school. Anybody that's taking the GRE will tell you that, and they're in graduate school, they'll tell you that, this is very, very similar to the kind of rigor that we go through. There are three different parts. There's a verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and the analytical writing. The verbal reasoning is mostly what we call the English part because it measures your ability to analyze and draw conclusions from, comprehension, synonyms, antonyms, feelings, all these. But the quantitative is the math part, your ability to interpret and analyze quantitative information. And the analytical writing, basically, it goes by the name, your critical thinking skills, how you can write. So they give you a topic there. They want you to make an argumentative statement or they want you to write about this. The GRE is currently from 130 to 170. I keep saying that anywhere at least 150 on each of the parts is very, very good. For the analytical, at least 3.5 to 4.0 is a very, very good raw score. But what they are looking at is your percentile, but not the raw score. But anyway, at least 150. If you get 150, you might, it's not a very great percentile, but I feel like for most schools, they are going to take at least 150. So just a quick look at what I mean by percentile. If you look at verbal reasoning with a score of 150, that's the first column. If you score 150 on verbal reasoning, your percentile is 47%. On a quantitative, it's 39%. If you score 160 on a verbal, you are 85th percentile. On the quantitative, you are 76. That means that on the quantitative, you perform better than 76% of people that took the same test. So, you want to really aim much higher so that, you can have a very good percentile. But, 150, for me, 150 is a very good score that I think that students can have. On the analytical, I think that 4.0, that puts you more than 60% of people that take the same test. GRE is very, very easy. It's very, very easy if you study. If you don't study, it can be very daunting. I can go through all these math problems, but this is the kind of questions that you're going to get on the GRE. It's something that tests your critical thinking skills, right? Your ability to eliminate answers. So when I do the comparison, I feel like, the math part can be compared to our secondary school core math. But here you apply a lot of critical thinking skills and it's much faster. Time is not on your side. But these are kind of the questions that you're going to get on the GRE. It's not that tough, but I want you to know that it's something that you can do, okay? The English part can get very, very tough. For example, this question, and you're supposed to fill in the blank, but some of these words we don't even know. So you need to sit down and start memorizing some of these words because otherwise, you wouldn't have any chance of getting these correct. Okay, so the GR is just math and English. You can do it. You can do much better. Start studying now. Okay. Okay, so let me talk about finances, funding. For most schools, you don't even have to apply for funding. Once you get admission, funding comes with it. For some schools, you need to apply for assistantship, whether teaching assistantship or research assistantship. Those are separate applications. But once you get admission, funding is much easier. So I know students that come and they say, oh, Dr. Sarpong, can you tell us about scholarships? Scholarships are great, but why hustle for scholarship when you can't even get admission? The admission is key. You get admission, they are going to throw the money at you. They're going to tell you about all the funding resources and all the great funding that you've got. So I don't want you guys to be worried so much about funding, but worry about your admission. Get the admission, the funding is going to come much later. So most schools provide full funding packages depending on the kind of package that they provide. So they usually give a tuition waiver and they get you an annual stipend, which can be between $12,000 to $36,000. That breaks down to 1,000 to 3,000 a month, and they also provide some level of health insurance. You know, as a graduate student, this is not bad money to live on. You know, in Europe, in Canada, in Ghana, you know, in the US, you know, there's some level of assistantship that is provided, but usually, you know, it's more of merit based that, you know, you perform well, you get admission, they provide you with this level of funding. There are several different forms of funding assistance. That you can be a graduate teaching assistant. That means that you're going to teach some classes that will help fund your studies. You can also be doing some research. There are also training grants that you can be on, supervisor grants, other endowments or fellowships. There are scholarships that you can get from Ghana. There are the DAD scholarship. There are the Fulbright scholarships. There are the MasterCard scholarship. There are so many scholarships that you can apply to. But what I usually tell students, get the admission, the funding will come with the admission. Unless you're applying to European schools that, you know, they also want you to apply to alternative sources of funding. That one, you need to go out there and look for these. There are so many of them, but, you know, if you're spending your data on social media, it might not be worth it. You might start spending your data on these scholarship programs so that you can at least get some of these very, very good scholarships. So we've talked about all of these. The Ghana Scholarship Secretariat also provides, you know, a list of scholarships that you can tap into. There are common scholarship, EU scholarship, Fulbright scholarship. But remember, most of these are going to be based on your GPA, your GRE, your work experience, research experience, and also a proposal that you have to write for these funding organizations. Okay, so you are going to apply to a school. There's a committee that reviews your application. It usually consists of 5 to 15 members. Remember, they are judging you, but you are not present. So it's your application that speaks for you. The decisions are going to be made at these admission committee meetings. They are more democratic, but also, you know, some can use their discretion if they have a very good relation with the program director. What are they looking for? All that we've talked about, your academic record, research interest, your statement, your recommendation letters, your GRE. Each score differently. So all these members are going to score differently, but remember, they take into consideration everything. So if you are deficient in your GPA, other areas might act as a buffer so that it can bump you up for you to get admission in these schools. Remember that you need to ask questions, but do not assume too much. My running theme is, what do I lose when I ask? Ask about scholarship that international students have gotten in these schools. Assume that you'll be accepted. So you have to start asking these questions much earlier, but don't be hammering them every time. Usually when you email them about questions, they're going to respond. But for me, phone call is the best way. You might also write on their Facebook page or their Twitter pages. They might also answer you. Also, you can email the faculty, ask only a few questions, be brief. These faculty, they're very, very busy. Don't be so verbose about the questions that you ask them. Okay. From now, you are going to make sure that you have a very good professional email. Legon provides you with very good emails. Don't be using your personal emails like, you know, Miss Independent, all these baby, all these stuff. I don't think that, you know, it gels well with the image that you are going to provide. Also, some of these institutions are tapping into your social media. Make sure that you have a very, very good social media pictures and nothing that will scare them away from giving you admission. Okay, so with that, I think that I've overused and overspent my time, so I will have time for the Q&A part. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sapon. We are very grateful for such a wonderful presentation. So at this moment, if you have questions, kindly put up your hand. But before we address those who put up their hand, before we address your question, there are some few questions in the chat box that I would like to read so that Dr. Sarpong will help us. One of our invited guests has addressed some of the questions. So those that have not been addressed, I will just read them out. So Dr. Sarpong, Doc, can you hear me? Hello, can you please hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so one of the questions in the chat is that in most graduate school applications, extracurricular activity is a requirement. And in some cases, that graduate school demands a certificate as proof. Please, what if you don't have any certificate to prove that? Secondly, what if you never engage in any extracurricular activity?
We've been helping students go through applications, really not seeing required extracurricular activities. If you've done it, fine. If you haven't, I don't think that that's a determinant for your admission into graduate school. You know, it's not everybody that's going to engage in these extracurricular activities. If you haven't done it, you know, you haven't done it. Don't go forge any certificate. But these are not requirements for admission into graduate school. Maybe Kwamina and Stephen might talk about that, whether they found such in the applications, but from what we've seen, you know, these are not requirements for admission into graduate schools.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Kwamina, do you have something to add to what Dr. has said?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the certificate thing, I've not seen it before, like to get maybe certificates of participating in certain programs, but the only thing that I will add is if you have an opportunity to engage in volunteering activities, that might be a little bit helpful. But I've not seen any graduate admission looking for people who are engaging in extracurricular activities. But all things being equal, if let's say you have the same application strength with somebody, they also want like people who they feel when they join their department will be involved in the things that the department do. And there is a lot of volunteering activities that one can engage in. And you shouldn't, like, I think what people see, they say you don't need to maybe become a GHABSA president or whatever. You could, in your small place, you could, even if you teach younger ones, it's some sort of volunteering activity that you are performing. So it's about how we think about the things we do and how we present them to show that we are very supportive people. But as Doc said, this is something that I wouldn't worry about, that I'll focus on the most important things for the application.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is, what is the difference between the following: motivation letter, statement of purpose, and letter of intent? So, Dr. Sarpong, can you hear me?
So that can be.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. I can hear you now.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, sorry. I think that my internet is not very great. But motivational letter of intent, statement of purpose. So those are very, very gray areas, and you know, usually when speaking what they need in these letters, okay, and you know that might be able to distinguish between whatever is a motivational letter, a letter of intent, or a statement of purpose. Usually, what I do compare is a statement of purpose and a personal statement. So personal statement is much broader than a statement of purpose. Statement of purpose is very, very specific. Why graduate school? What have you done in preparation for graduate school? What are some of the obstacles that you faced in graduate school, and why do you think that you're best fit for this program? That statement of purpose, very, very specific. You talk about the general things, that you've done that would enable you get into that graduate school. So, you can talk about your beginnings and why science excites you that much, and what do you think you're going to contribute. You can talk a little bit about your family, about some of the obstacles that you faced and all of that. So it's very, very general, but statement of purpose is very, very specific. They tell you a letter of intent. What is your intention to pursue this graduate studies, or why do you want to get into this school? Very, very specific, very, very direct. But usually when schools ask you to write these letters, they do explain what are the requirements for these letters to be in their statement of purpose or in their letters of intent. So I'll usually, clarify from what the school means, but you can write a general one and fit it to what the school is asking. And that's what I did when I was applying to graduate school. I wrote a generic one, then I went back to the school. Okay, the school, let me see, blah, 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 blah. The University of Rochester says that the statement of purpose should clearly describe your reasons for applying to this school, your preparation for the field of study, your study and research interest, future career plans, and other aspects of your background and interest, which may aid the admissions committee if there are any weaknesses. So they are very, very direct, and even them, they don't have an idea about what the generic statement of purpose. So they explain to you what should be in that statement of purpose. So for me, I think that it's a very area, the differences between all these three, but you need to go with the specific of what the school requires from you. They are probably the same, but what the requirements are for what is.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. So
Hello,
Taylor,
Frank.
you can unmute and then ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, sir. Please, my question is with respect to the relationship aspects. After you finish your first degree, between that age range, between let's say 25 to 30, the African parents will be putting pressure on you. You have to marry, you have to give birth. And you said that there's some master's program you can do for 6 years. So I don't know how you did yours. So can you please educate me on how you're able to combine both of them? Thank you.
Taylor, if I get
That's a very,
your
very good
question
question.
right.
And
I think when you stop sharing, you can get a wider band internet width.
Hello, Doc.
The old word,
Hello, Dr. Sarpong.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, Frank, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Doug, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I stopped sharing, so at least I can talk. Okay. So, as I said, I really want students to
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I think
his internet is disturbing us. So if
I got the question right, a person is asking about relationship and graduate school, right? Uh, I'm not married yet, but I think when I came to this institution, I've seen a lot of people. Even in Ghana, I saw people doing PhD and also married. Some have given birth. Personally, my current supervisor told me he had children when he was doing his PhD. So I think you should, especially if you want to go into academia, you should start to plan your life now and incorporate everything you do as part of your life, right? You shouldn't see grad school as okay, yeah, I want to go for this time and maybe marry afterwards. Especially if you want to go to academia, you go on to do a postdoc. It's the same research work you'll be doing. Nothing is going to change. And I believe we thought when we finished our WASI, things will be easier, and we came to do biochem, and it's terrible. It's the same way when you go to graduate school, things become more intense. Even after graduate school, even you complete your PhD, where you'll be looking at what next to do with your life, it becomes more crazy than before. So you would always not have time to do other things if you don't plan to do it. So I would encourage that you start to plan your life with whoever, your partner or whatever. Like you guys should share common interests, know that this is what you all want to achieve, and build a life even whilst you're pursuing. Or you can
Please excuse me. I want to say something, please. Can I talk?
yeah, you can.
Okay. So you see, in this case, for males and females, it's a different case because males, yeah, we will not really have any issue. All you have to do is to just like you have your wife impregnated, that's all, you continue your studies. But if you're a female in graduate school and like let's say you are pregnant, mood swings, and you have to give birth, take care of the child and things like that, it's going to be a bit difficult. Or so my question is, do they have like let's say special plans for people who are let's say pregnant and doing graduate school, like special exceptions and things like that?
yeah, totally. And I think you are speaking from the Ghanaian point of view, but if you come to the US, it's not like Ghana where we put much females to take care of children. Once you give birth, the husband or the father of the child also gets to go for paternity leave. And from what I see here, the responsibility of taking care of a child during the birth process is shared by the two people and not just a. It also depends on maybe the lab that you are in, the supervisor, and like effective communication, some sort of understanding. Because you are going to take a break, definitely, either you giving birth or you being the husband of your wife, you're going to do some of these things. And if you get a supervisor, like I told you, someone who had children when he was doing it, more understanding. Didn't engage in any relationship. If you engage in any relationship for us, well, I think you know the values and what you want. Clearly, when where to go and all that. Yeah. Did I answer your question, Taylor?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. So if you have any other question, kindly put up your hand and you shall be called to ask your question. In the meantime, Mr. Kwamena, someone was asking about whether you can still work and then pursue your graduate student.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, your graduate studies, whether you can still do your some part-time job and then still pursue your graduate studies.
Yeah, totally. So I think in Ghana, yeah, for sure you can always work, but you also have to know that the graduate study it's a rigorous process, and you want to pay more attention to your studies. But if maybe for some financial have to work, you're always allowed to work. But in the US, there are some laws that govern the visa that you have. So like international students, you are not permitted to work more than 20 hours. And I think you can only do work that are related to campus activities. So only on campus jobs. If you go to do maybe off-campus jobs, there might be complications that would negatively affect your visa status, which you don't want to engage yourself in. So you can definitely work, but you have to talk to your institution's advisors. And if there's an international body on campus, you need to speak to them before you make those decisions.
All right, thank you very much. Now, before we continue with the questions, I can still see some hands. I will call you, but before we continue, I would like to acknowledge the presence of some other invited guests in our midst. So we have Mr. Stephen Cote with us on the call. He is a PhD student at Oklahoma State University in the United States. Mr. Cote, you are welcome, and we are grateful you are here.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm also glad to be here. I've heard a lot of the questions, and I would want to acknowledge that you guys are asking very good questions. And I think Koby and Dr. Sarpong have also done well to answer them. All right.
Great. So for the following questions or the subsequent questions, you'll be helping Mr. Kwamena so that we address the questions. We also have on the call Mr. David Boateng. Mr. David Boateng will be starting his doctoral studies in the City University of New York very soon. Mr. David, we are grateful you are here and thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Boateng David.
Yeah, boss.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We are grateful.
Actually, honestly, I wasn't expecting this.
Like on the bottom left, they ask whether I want to connect the audio via data Wi-Fi.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry about the interruption. Please continue.
All right, that's fine. Honestly, I was also here to seek for knowledge as well, but then once I've been called, I mean, I also appreciate it very much, and I'm very glad to be here. So if there is anything, I also, from what I experienced, I think I can also contribute to this so that we can all help each other. Right.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so Mina, you can ask your question now. Unmute and then ask your question.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. Please, my own is not really a question. I need an advice on something. Sorry. Okay, so for me, I find every course that I've taken in the biochemistry department very interesting. I'm in 400, so every course that I've taken, I think it's very interesting. So in going to do my master's or PhD, I don't know, it bothers me a lot to choose a particular course, a particular program to study. So I want to be advised on how to get a particular program or how to choose a particular program.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kote or Mr. Nyame, any one of you can take that question.
Mina, I would want a bit of clarification. When you say program, what are you actually referring to? Because biochemistry in itself is a program.
Yeah, I think,
Seeing that my undergraduate courses that I took or I've taken so far are very good, and I think I like every one that I took. So going to do masters, you see, masters, do you choose programs? Maybe I'm not.
Oh,
I don't know. So how do I go about it? Since I find every undergraduate course to be interesting. Yeah.
okay. So, per my experience, um, you're not going to do one particular. I think by program, you're referring to something like molecular genetics or signal transduction or something, and you having to focus on one during your graduate studies. Per my experience, the biochemistry coursework is a bit similar to what you have as your during your undergrad. So myself, I've even done some of the courses I even did undergrad, just that it's a more deeper version. You get it. So you still have access to all of these courses when you're able to do the biochemistry program. Okay, I think that's the same thing too for Kwamina. But one thing that I want to know when coming to graduate school is, and this was also an advice I was given, graduate school is meant to equip you with the things you need to partake in independent study. Okay, that's the main aim of graduate studies. So sometimes it is good to enter into biochemistry, right? Having a particular thing you want to do in mind, but then, as Dr. Sarpong said, you would have to go into the graduate program having an open mind, okay? Because there are so many things that would influence what you would want to do. It could be the culture of the lab. It could even be your supervisor. Okay, you could have a supervisor who is doing something you are interested in, but then his attitude isn't good. Okay, and you wouldn't be able to work with him. So you would move on to another lab where you have somewhere you can work in. Okay, so it's more about having an open mind, okay, being in for what you get, because it's the main purpose is it's for it to equip you so that one day you can do your own independent study. Okay, and then there are also this courses or programs as referred to during the graduate studies also. I think myself, I would have to do molecular genetics also. I'd have to do signal transduction. I've done metabolism. I've done all of the things I'm guessing you're talking about, even though I'm doing graduate studies. All right, I think that's what I have. I hope this helps.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Nyame, is there anything to add to what Mr. Kote have said?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is it's totally fine if you don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my life right now, and I know 4th years, 5th years here who don't know what to do with their lives right now. And one thing you should understand is science is very dynamic. If you listen to Dr. Sarpong's trajectory, you realize that he has changed field, right, throughout his master's, his PhD, and even what he did for his what he will be doing might change with respect to time. So it's absolutely, so you just have to find research areas in this. And if you are so confused, the best way is that are sort of program. So you think you might love genetics, you might love doing more biochemistry, you might love doing maybe studying cell biology, looking for how proteins are being trafficked within the cells and all that. It's good to get into an umbrella program where you can get opportunity to rotate with different faculty who are engaging in different research activities. Then you'll be able to tell whether you really have something.
Now we are collaborating. Why be that?
Yeah, so sometimes you might think that you really love this area because you learned about it, but practically you start to do an experiment on the area and you feel like this is not for you. So that would be the best, to go to schools that offer umbrella programs where you can choose to do multiple things, and at the end of the day, you will select a lab that you have your studies. So biomedical science, I wouldn't worry about the name of the program that I'm pursuing, especially it's an umbrella program. When people ask me what program are you doing, I was admitted to the biochemistry department, but now my supervisor is wholly affiliated to the chemical engineering department, partly by genetics. So it doesn't matter. In the lab, we have expertise from different backgrounds, biochemistry, some are even MD PhDs. We have someone from chemical engineering who is very good with mass spectrometer, proteomics, lipidomics, and metabolomics stuff. And yeah, so it's like research is evolving where we're trying to learn from each other with different set of background to solve the same question. So I wouldn't worry about what specifically you want to do now. When it gets there, you just look for programs that interest you, and when you get in, you will start to refine your path as you go forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Ni, I saw your hand up. Do you still want to ask your question?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
Hello to everyone. Hello, Kwamena.
Hi, Nia. I can hear you.
I have series of questions I want to ask. The first one is, what has been the motivation and inspiration? I don't know if you have touched on that or spoken about that. Also, what has been the challenge so far? Do you have any regrets? And what are some of the things you would want us to know before applying? And maybe I know there are people out there who have low GPAs. Maybe they are graduating with a lower, but would still want to apply to schools outside the country. So what are some of maybe the advices you can give them in order for them to realize their dreams of becoming whatever they want to become here? So these are the series of questions I have. I don't know if you would want me to go over them again so that you can answer, or you have them in mind.
So I got motivation and inspiration. You asked if we have any regret, and advice to people with lower GPA. Is that the three questions?
Yes. And yeah. And what are some of the things you would want us to know before applying? Before applying to any school at all.
The clarification with motivation and inspiration, you mean applying to graduate school or pursuing graduate school itself, or like everything else?
Yes. What was your motivation and inspiration? Like, yeah.
I think David will be one of the best people to answer the motivation and inspiration, because I really found him to be highly motivated to apply to graduate school. And now he's one of the people on that. I'll start with the advice to low GPA. So I think Doc has said this, like it's very rare to get into the US, at least, with a GPA less than 3.0. So usually what you want to do is, it's a bit easy to get a master's program, especially in Ghana or maybe elsewhere. So if you can get into a master's program, then you would be able to build your GPA from there, and also gain some sort of research experience throughout the project that you do during the master's. And you could use that to pursue the PhD. Actually, it's now that it is becoming a little bit common, but you know that the usual graduate master's and PhD. It's not like you are stuck. And research, if you love research, I don't think that because everything that you do, you want to love what you do, right? So you could be you want to be a postdoc and become a PI in the same sort of environment, fine. So that is what I think. And it's also not impossible if you have a very low, like if you have a low GPA and you have very good research experiences with publications, I think you have some chance to apply. Maybe you can reach out individually and we can talk about your situation. So everybody's situation is different, and the part that I think would help them would also be different. As to regrets, I don't know if I have any any regrets, but I feel like as you have regrets at every stage in life. It's one thing that you would have to see it. For example, I'm in Stanford University, and we know it's one of the top schools in the world. It's easy to be overwhelmed when you come into such an environment because you have people who are even coming from the same institution who have been open to most of these resources. Perhaps you didn't get these resources when I wasn't in Ghana, and exposure to know some of the things to learn as you guys are having this opportunity. I got to know Dr. Sapon, like I think in my second semester of level 4. I literally had no idea what I want to do with my life after undergrad. So you can imagine, okay, I'm not going to consider some of the things that I need to learn and all that. So it was a short time to prepare really well for graduate. So if I have any regrets, I wouldn't say I have any regrets now because I believe that failure is being out. If you are doing something that you think this is not what you want to do, you have to stop. So even if you start a PhD and you think PhD is not, you don't do it, you don't force it. But I feel like if you are motivated enough to do whatever you want to do, you want to go to industry or whatever, definitely there will be challenges. So you shouldn't see it as a threat, but you should be motivated and look at the end goal that you want. So for me, I'm interested in translational research, trying to identify drug targets. So developing more inhibitors or drugs to liberate the effect of whatever disease that I'll be studying, and also has a long interest in joining a biotech or research. And I know I need to understand some of these things. So I think it's all about what you want to do. So for regret, the only thing that I regret now is not to spoken to the right people, or I didn't find the right people early. But to become better prepared for my PhD. And as for motivation and inspiration, I think it's a personal conviction. So if Doc is on the call, I don't know if he remembers this. I remember when Doc came to Ghana and Doc gave me an opportunity to fit in his car. He was going to alight me off at the canteen, and Doc told me about how good studying in the US is. And I remember I told Doc, for me right now, what I want is if I get a school in the US that is study even under a tree, that is, I just want to go. So I remember back then, like August 2019, I had that conviction and that motivation. So it's all about, so when I was doing my service, I was very focused on what I want. But I don't know. This might be a hard one, but I'm sharing this because this was my perspective. I decided if either I come to the US or I do nothing. I don't think we should have that mindset. So I think that motivated me enough to actually how I was pursuing schools. And it didn't come easy. I have a personal story that I can share for the rest of the day, but it wouldn't be important. But what I want to say is that you should always pursue your dreams, and you are the only one who can move your dreams forward. We are here talking to you. So if people the chance to reach out to me, I'll send my LinkedIn. But don't forget, people are busy. Dog is busy. Your professors are busy. Sometimes you can go and see a lecturer, and maybe they'll say something like, "Hey, like you are disturbing me," or whatever that is, shouldn't be a bother to you, because what they say doesn't affect your career. It is about when you give up, it affects your career. So you should push, and you can reach out. Maybe you can reach out to him. Even he can help you to do. He doesn't help you. You can be talking to David, or you can be talking to someone else. So the more people you have in your network, it becomes when you get something. So when I got in touch with Dr. Sapon, I was also able to get in touch with a whole lot of people within the US, people who have made it before. One little advice that I would give is always try to reach out to the right people. Reach out to the people who have done what you want to achieve. It's as simple as that. It makes your work a little bit. Even with respect to schools, if you choose a school and you know people within the school, to me they'll even be the best to talk. We go to Oklahoma State right now or CUNY. Stephen and David, respectively, will be the best to talk to, not me, not just because I'm at Stanford University. And another thing that I want to also let you people understand, when you push at sometimes miracle, and I also want people to know that I got recruited in a school like Iowa State, so it doesn't matter who's trying to apply to. So like Doc said, it's good to get like a range of schools, from top schools, middle schools, and low schools. You may never know where you're going to get into, so you want to cast your right to be able to achieve the dreams that you have. Yeah, sorry for talking lengthy for he has multiple questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nyame. All right, so is there any other question? If you have a question, kindly put up your hand. Okay, so the hand up. Okay, there is no hand up at the moment, so we'll move on to the next on the program outline. And the next on the outline is to have some of these people who are in the graduate school to share with us some of the experiences they had during the graduate school applications. And so we'll have Mr. Stephen Cote to share with us some of the experiences he had during the graduate school application, after which Mr. Kwame Nyame will also share with us his experiences, and then David will also share with us his experiences. Then we'll move on to the next on the program outline. So Stephen, if you can hear me, in the next 5 minutes, can you share with us some of the experiences you had during the graduate school applications?
All right, Frank. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to discuss with you guys about my experience. Let me see. The graduate school application during our time, well, I remember it's being time demanding and all, but what I remember from it was that, you have to plan everything prior to, like you have to plan everything before. Okay, so I mean, I knew it was time demanding and all. That's why during my NSS time, I chose not to apply to places that wouldn't give me the time to do this application. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to be a TA at the department, because in as much as there are various good avenues for graduate school application, I'm sorry, there are various good avenues for a good work also. What I wanted to do was enter into graduate school right after national service. So I decided to apply to be a TA, because there is this flexibility when it comes to the TA work. It's not a work that you have to go at this particular time, do this and this and this within this particular time, finish at this particular time, and then that's it. You do what you want to do when there's work to do, and then that's it. So that was the first thing I had to put in place, making sure that I really get the time to apply, because graduate school application is a work in itself. It requires all the time, it requires lots of time, it requires lots of resources like money and all of those things. So yeah, so with the experiences, I mean, we had to put money aside for it, because in as much as we all wanted to apply to schools that were free, it's not all schools that we want to enter that are free. Okay, so there was that. Some schools, or there's the opportunity to apply for application fee waivers. So those are the ones that you look for. As Dr. Sarpong mentioned, okay, usually those that are able to, or those that want to provide you with free application are those that have the high chances of admitting you because they already have the money. That's why they are doing things for free. You get it? So there was that aspect. I'm trying to remember how the experience was. I remember we had to set time to prepare for the GRE also, which was quite tough, having to, when you're done with undergrad, you're done with studies for a while. But then you now have to study for GRE and all of those things. You've let your brain rest for a while and you have to get it back into learning and all of those things. So it was a difficult time, but then, we had experienced people. Like I know some, I was able to talk to those who are already in the graduate program abroad here, who were very helpful. Okay, they're very helpful. They helped me put things together. They helped. They really gave me good advices when it came to the application. When it came to the GRE, I was able to study. I was able to write the GRE. Well, I will admit that GRE was a bit tough for me because I guess I didn't prepare as I ought to. But in the GRE itself, it's GRE learning is something that is really different from the style of learning we are used to, because GRE is not you learning something and going to produce what you've learned. Okay, but then it's a learning that seeks to draw something from you. Okay, something that they know will be required for you as a graduate student. So for instance, you look at the various parts, the verbal reasoning part of it, which is the English part. With graduate school, you would have to know, you would have to be good at English because you would have to be writing a lot. You would have to be doing lots of presentations. You will have to be speaking a lot. Okay, so the verbal reasoning of the GRE seeks to bring this forth. With graduate school also, it requires some level of reasoning. That's the quantitative reasoning or the math aspect of GRE seeks to bring out. Okay, so it's not necessarily how smart you are, but then it's how you are able to think and maneuver yourself about. So it was tough. I had good scores, although they weren't that great. And I'm saying this to motivate some of you because I've had people, I think last year, some of the people who wrote the GRE and didn't do that well, told me that it has really made them feel bad about their application to the point of even giving up. And how to motivate these guys that yes, the GRE it has its role, but then it's not entirely it. Okay, so forced to do well in the GRE. You have to force and do well. Okay, but then if you don't do that well, all hope is not lost. You can still apply your skills. After all, the GRE is just one part of the application process. The application process is a holistic process. Okay, so one part can buffer the other, sort of. So there was that. The GRE, after the GRE, we still went ahead with the applications, and there were bounces. Even though I had a good GPA and all, I think as Corona was saying, I had bounces. Okay, I had some interviews, and then some of the schools also came through. Okay, so one thing that I learned from the whole application process is that there's this degree of uncertainty with it. Okay, that's why you have to do what to apply to as many schools as you can, as Dr. Sarpong was saying, because somebody can have a very high GPA but then get bounces. Somebody can have not that good GPA but then get accepted, and then it goes either ways. Okay, so there is this kind of uncertainty. Some will call it grace, others will call it luck, however you call it. There's this degree of uncertainty with the whole application process. So thanks be to God, we knew of this earlier from people like Dr. Sarpong and those who had applied earlier. So if it forced us to apply to lots of schools. Okay, I applied to like 8 schools. I think Kwamina applied to 7, 8 thereabouts. I know of somebody who applied to like 12 schools. Okay, and all of those things. So there was that aspect also of the application process. And then now it gets to waiting for decisions, and that's what we call the beginning of the heart attack time. Okay, because from that point in time till you're able to travel and come to the US to further your studies, is heart attacks throughout. It's heart attacks throughout. So you are waiting for schools. There'll be a point where other people will be getting schools, but you will not be getting schools. Okay. There are points where other people will be getting schools, but you will not be getting schools. And during those times, it really gets very stressful. Okay, so that was something that I think we all went through one way or the other. But at the end, God being so good, at least all the people I know, we all came through with schools one way or the other. And then after that, there's the whole visa application process, and then coming to the US, which was also another trouble because we were in COVID time. So we were not able to come to school during our admitted time because of COVID. Air travels was blocked, all of those things. But then we still came through, and then thanks be to God, we are all here. So it has really been a stressful process. It was fun, but then through that process, I believe those who were doing it together, we developed more connections with each other. And as of now, we still communicate and still plan things because of our experience with graduate school application. Okay, so I think my time is up. This is the little I have to share with you guys. And I think I saw that somebody's asking me for my email. I'm going to put my email in the chat session. And if anybody has any question, whatever it is, just come and ask. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kote. We are very grateful. Kwame Nanyame, your experiences.
Yeah, I would just add to what Stephen has said. I think Stephen has said everything. I don't know if I can share my experiences. I think I want to share what I think will be the best for people who wants to go to graduate school now. So in my experiences, what some of the hard things that I learned, one hard thing that I learned that Stephen shared, you need some money, but you don't, if you don't have money there is always a way to go about your situation. That is a little that I want to add there. I want to tell people that they need to join a lab that will support their goal now. Either like if you get a chance to choose a lab for your project, or after school you want to join a lecturer, try to join a lab that supports your goal, because it will be terrible if you join a lab that does not support your goal. It will be difficult for you to get to any school, because like maybe the PI or the lab's research, or they are not pushing you hard enough, you don't have papers, or they don't want you to even maybe apply that year. They want you to maybe wait for 5 years, and like there's those dynamics as well. So you don't want to get frustrated just because you find yourself having national service or joining a lab or working in a certain lab. So try to get a lab that supports you, and try to get mentors. That is a little that I would say, because we can't share everything here. Get mentors, like people like Steven, other people. You can even reach out to white people in the state who might be willing to help you out. Try to get mentors. Be comfortable talking about your science, because you can do whatever at the interview stage. If you can't tell a professor what science you're doing, it's not about what you've done. You don't need to make for COVID. You just have to be able to talk about the little science that you do in your respective labs. And I think you need to also prepare well for graduate school, and it involves trying to learn as much as you can whilst you are in undergrad. And yeah, speaking to people of what you need to study as well, some of the skills, you need to build as many skills, technical and computational skills, especially in these times. I've left my email already. I think people can reach out to me. The last thing that I got an opportunity to join an admission committee And I just want to share with you guys what they look for in statements. So whatever that you are writing, make sure it demonstrates a degree objective, the motivation that you have, like you being an initiator, some sort of initiative, clarity of purpose, how you are overall, how fit you are in their program. So to break a little down, when they review applications, at least from Stanford University's point, they look at the academic performance, which we can't do anything about because it's mainly your GPA. So you want to get a high GPA. Research potential. So the depth of your research experience, the time, independence, critical understanding, and passion for the topic, evidence of critical thinking and problem solving, strength of research in your recommendation letters, because you would say something in your statement and it should coincide with what maybe your recommenders are also saying. And they don't consider the prestige of the lab. Actually, I don't think most people in the US know many people in Ghana. PS, except for a few ones. So don't worry about the prestige and don't worry about publications. It's great. I think David has publications which helped him in his application, but most people who end up in the US don't have. The other thing is what we call commitment to diversity. So your individual commitment to diversity, clear and critical thinking are important, and how your letter should demonstrate the importance that you see in diversity in science. And personal resilience, talking about consider the content, how your overall essay should show some resilience. It should show that you are someone who does not really give up, because PhD is going to be tough. 90% of the time, whatever you do might not work. So you need to have some motivations to be able to continue. And you need to show some sort of leadership improvement. So leadership is not just about maybe becoming a leader in GHABSA, but it's about taking initiative, even in labs, the lab that you are, things to make things done, arranging stuff and all that. Motivation to pursue PhD, you should be able to demonstrate the role that scientists play in the society in your essay, and personalize most of the things that you write, and everything should be genuine and original. One problem that I find with most of us is that we always want maybe a statement of purpose or whatever from somebody, and we just want to replicate the same thing. It's very bad, and there are softwares like some schools use to just track similar essays that have come before, and you don't want to be a candidate that, after all the effort, maybe paying a lot of money that you don't get. And you should also try to talk about the benefit of whatever program that you are going to read will do for you in your career, and you should make sure your recommenders are writing very great statements for you. Most of them will ask you to write it. I think it's a good way because you can actually sell yourself better and let them. So these are the little that I will add. In conclusion, reach out to people. Anybody is welcome to reach out to me, especially through LinkedIn or by email. I will definitely respond. Sometimes it takes time, but I'm happy to help people, especially from the biochemistry department in Ghana.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kwamina Nyame. We also have on the call Samuel Mensah Bafo also with us. He is also he is going to be a PhD student in September at Purdue University. He is also with us, and he will be sharing some of the experiences. So before he comes in, David will share with us his experiences in, during the application to graduate school. So David, if you can hear me in the next 5 minutes, can you share with us your experiences? Hello, David. Okay, it seems David is currently not on the call or cannot hear me. So Samuel, if you can hear me, we are very grateful for you joining this meeting. You're welcome. So can you please share with us some of the experiences you had during your graduate school application?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you so much for acknowledging my presence, and I also like to express my gratitude to Kwamina and then also Stephen for the support that they gave us during the process. They have said a lot of things, and I think the only thing that I would like to say is that as Kwamina said, it's all about you and what you want. Everything is all about you, so you just have to be committed. And then also you have to just race with your dreams. Okay, don't just look at anybody. You just have to race with your dreams. The process is the challenging one. Like, it's a very long process, and every stage, from applications, from to admissions, to interviews, to acceptance. Choosing between schools. It's not an easy process. I just want to say that whatever you want, you just go for it. As Kwamina said, talk to people, get their advices, and then also you need to also reach out to not only the Blacks. What helped me in the process was also to communicate both with my colleagues, both Blacks, and also to reach out to white people, because I knew that, especially during the interviews, I had to reach out to the white people because I needed to know how they read our answers, and also how they like to evaluate whatever you say. So I had a mentor who is also she graduated, she finished her postdoc recently, and she's working in a biotech company. She was in Stanford, and I wanted her to meet Kwamina, but she couldn't because she was quite busy. So I would like to just add this, that if you are in level 400, level 300, level 200, and you want to pursue that dream of going to graduate school, or let's say going to the medical school, or maybe graduate medical school, you just have to talk to people and then know what you want. Okay, when you know what you want, everything that you plan and then you work towards it, I'm sure that if it's God's will, it will come to pass. So I'll hand it over to David, and then David, I see you. Okay, David will continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Samuel. So David.
Yeah, I'm sorry for what happened earlier. I had one or two issues. So yeah, I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear and see you.
So concerning my experience throughout the admission, I might say in my admission process, Kwamina and Dr. Sarpong played a major role in it in terms of advice and what to do next and stuff. Although I had plans earlier, but then I wasn't much confident on how to go about it until I met Kwamina, who introduced to me graduate school, how I could go about my application and stuff. Dr. Sarpong and my seniors have said much of it. The little I'll have to say is, in terms of the application fees, some may not be free, although some you have to pay. You can also talk to the coordinators, and they may be able to grant you waivers, although they are accepting application fees and stuff. Once you email them, you tell them your situation, how you are having financial crisis and stuff, they may be able to consider, and then some may give you waiver. I think I had waivers to like two, I think almost half of my schools or so, but then those I had to pay were very expensive. And I think it was quite, emailing them was important, and it helped me save some money and stuff. So in that application process, you getting in touch with your lecturers, those should be taking recommendation from is very important. For me, I informed some of them earlier. The person who I spoke to very late was Dr. Sarpong, but then at the end, he was able to, take a draft for me and then submit on my behalf, which really helped me. I didn't only get interviews and admissions from Clini. Okay, I might say admission offer from Clini alone, because I think once they came, I accepted the offer and then I left the others, whether they called me for interview or not. I may not get anything at the end, so I just had to let them go so that I won't block someone else's opportunity in case I should accept to accept the interview and attend it or not. If I'm offered admission and at the end I reject it, I may end up blocking someone's opportunity. So what I did was just, once I've accepted the first one that came, I just forgot about the rest, and then I focused on the way forward for the one I have accepted. And then in the admission process, Kwamina has said everything. He has dissected everything into details. And on my side, I think once he is the boss and he has said much about it, I don't think there is anything more for me to add. But then just start your preparation very early. On my side, fortunately for me, let's say I was fortunate enough, I didn't take the GRE, but then I happened to gain admission, which is a bit rare from what Dr. Sarpong said. Most of my schools give GRE as an optional choice. But then, although they may say optional, they may actually consider it, because I spoke to one of the faculty who happened to be part of the admission board, and what he informed me is, although they are saying the GRE is optional, once you send it, they will evaluate it as part of the document you are submitting, even before they go to the other stuff, such as your transcript and stuff. And some of them also tend to pick their candidates earlier before the deadline. So it's very advisable for you to submit all your SOPs, your transcripts, or your admission earlier before the deadline, because that was what he told me. It's very important to reach out to the faculties. Some of them may be one way or the other be part of the admissions committee, and once they know you already or something, I don't know, who knows, maybe luck will be on your side as well. So just try and reach out to them and find out. You can also ask them about their research and stuff, because it's something, once you get to interact with them, you may get to know about one or two things which should be, it will help you in your admission process. Yeah, I think that will be all on my side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Right. David, I think anyone who joined this call has not regretted. He or she has learned a lot from all our resources now. But before we try to conclude the program, we'd like to ask our main speaker to share with us any concluding remarks that you want to share with us. So Dr. Sarpong, if you can hear me, do you have any concluding remarks that you want to share with all of us before we end the meeting?
All right. Sorry about the communication issue. I just tested me and asked me, Dr. Sarpong, are you using Airtel Tigo? Of course, I'm using Tigo. That's why. Frank, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, all right. So, I like that you guys are curious, enthusiastic about graduate school. You need to pursue this as if this is what is going to make you stay alive. Job opportunities in Ghana are less. Please make every effort. Talk to Kwame, talk to David, talk to Stephen, Precious, the graduate students actually in our department, and you have to plan. Form a community. You guys cannot do it all alone. It's very, very hard if you try doing this alone. It's very, very hard. So get a community of friends, your colleagues, a cohort. You guys should memorize these words together. Just do it in unison. Also, remember that you need people to critique your SOPs. You need them to look at your CVs, critique your SOPs. use the people that you have. Please, we are always there to help. Me, if you come to my office and I have time, I will help you. If I don't have time, I'll tell you, go and come back next week. Okay, we are there to help you. We want you guys to succeed. Okay, so that, you know, when you guys train in Ghana, you train outside, at least you can come back and, you know, come and help Ghana. And, you know, you can send me some Momo cry, actually. Me, if you send me Momo, I will take it. Okay, so, you know, please work very, very hard. Use the community that you have. Get everything right. Start early, start early, start early. If you're in 200 and 300, this is probably your last opportunity to get a very good GPA, and you should be fine. I really have either any other spaces that I can help, please let me know and I'll be willing.
All right, thank you very much as well, Dr. Sarpong. We are grateful that you joined the call. So we are far behind time. We've spent a lot of time, and we'll be trying to conclude very soon. So without much ado, I will call on Miss Evelyn Tewia, who happens to be the Welfare Secretary for GHABSA UG, to give us the closing remarks and then vote of thanks. So Evelyn, if you can hear me, kindly give us a vote of thanks and then the closing remarks. Okay, it seems Evelyn can't hear me, so I will do that on her behalf. We are very grateful, first of all, to God Almighty for having us to have this program and making it a successful one. And we are also very grateful to Dr. Sarpong for finding time in your busiest schedule to be with us this evening to share with us some of the things that we need to do before we apply for graduate school. We're also thankful to Kwamina, Stephen, Samuel, and David for the contributions you made. It was very educative. Thank you, and we say God bless you so much. We ask that whatever we've learned, if you have the desire to go to graduate school, as the presenters said, we should start the preparation as soon as possible and then talk to them. We should get mentors and then ask questions for them to help us in our applications. And we know with God on our side, we shall get to our dreams. If you also want to apply to medical school, you can still reach out to these people. And I tell you, they will be very helpful to you. They will guide you and mentor you to apply to the graduate medical school as well. Or whatever field you want to go into after biochemistry, you can also reach out to them, and they'll be ever ready to help you and guide you in that line. So thank you very much for joining. We hope that in our next program, as part of the InFocus series, you'll gladly join to learn as well. So we are grateful to all of you. Before we close, we'll ask if Josie is on the line, we'll ask that she lead our thoughts in the closing prayer. If she is not around, then Mary will help us in that regard.
Hello. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, please, you can.
Okay, and please let's pray. Our dear Lord, the Master Jesus, we thank you so much for this day. We are grateful for how far you've brought us. We thank you for a successful program. That we pray committing all those on board, our guest speakers, we pray committing them into your holy hands, and you shall continue to deal with them. We thank you for the life of our lecturer, Dr. Sarpong. We thank you very much for making this a reality. We pray for more grace. This we ask your son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So thank you very much. Kwamina is still around. If you have questions, I think he will be available to answer them. So if you have questions, you can still stay behind and then interact with the speakers. So thank you and God bless you. Let's have a good night.